everybody. Thank you all so much for coming to my TED Talk. My name is Edie, and my research project is in what I like to call the death of art. More specifically, one of the primary factors that contribute to the decline of visual artistic creation in the United States, and how can this decline be combated? Now, I want to preface my talk by saying that art was our first language. Now, you're probably wondering, Edie, what are you talking about? But what I'm trying to say is that before we had phones, before we had social media, before we had education, before people could even form a coherent sentence, we had art. Art is a fundamental part of who we are as people, and it's a fundamental part of who we are as human beings. There's a quote by Matt Corral that always stands out to me when I think about AI education in art. Art has always been intrinsically human. It comes as much from our flaws and successes as it does our mistakes. Through the process of making it, we express what's inside us, our joy and frustration, longing and sadness, in a way which is instinctive and deep-rooted. This quote highlights something essential. Art is fundamentally tied to human experience and emotion. It is unique, irreplaceable, and deeply personal. However, despite this connection, visual artistic creation in the United States is declining. This is a painting by Pablo Picasso. It's called Guernica, and it was painted in 1937. For the most part, art has always been political. It always has meaning, it always talks about something that is social and political in our society and world. And ever since then, art has been really, really important. And it culminated a lot in the 60s. Then since the 60s, it kind of started to decline. During the 1960s, visual art played an important role in the culture of America, functioning as a powerful vehicle for political expression, social commentary, and collective identity. The 60s were a time of cultural revolution, including eras like the Civil Rights Movement, Second Wave Feminism, and the Sexual Revolution. Artists responded directly to those changes, using their work to challenge authority and question societal norms. Art did not play a marginal role in this kind of revolution. It was deeply connected with political activism and culture, reflecting it and influencing it at the same time. This kind of experimentation reinforced the idea that art is an active and living force capable of shaping perception and provoking change. The role of art in our society now has changed dramatically. Today, art exists in a fast-paced, digital, and market-driven world where speed and accessibility matter more than depth. Because of the internet and social media, anyone can create, share, and consume art instantly. At first, that sounds like a good thing. It opens the door for more voices and participation, but it comes with a cost. Some critics describe this shift as a move towards a no-brow culture, a world where the line between meaningful, intentional art and quick, disposable content is almost non-existent. Art is no longer something we experience together in museums or galleries, but something we scroll past and ignore alone on our phones. At the same time, art has become increasingly tied to money and visibility. It's treated less like a form of expression and more like a product, something to brand, sell, and invest in. Success is often measured by likes, shares, and market value, rather than meaning, emotional impact, or risk. When everything is constantly competing for attention, nothing has time to truly matter or make a lasting impact on anyone. We are constantly surrounded by more images, videos, and media than ever before, but each individual piece holds less weight, less presence, and less power. As a result, the voice of art is no longer unified or influential, it's fragmented, scattered across platforms, trends, and algorithms. And in that fragmentation, the beauty and meaning of art is slowly getting lost. With the rise of AI, there are fewer opportunities for human artists to create and be recognized. At the same time, schools are placing less emphasis on arts education, and government funding for the arts continues to shrink, limiting access to creative development. My research argues that AI, along with the stigma that art classes are unimportant, is actively diminishing the meaning and beauty of art today. AI is often presented as a helpful, neutral, or even beneficial tool, something that enhances creativity. But in reality, its widespread use in artistic production does the absolute opposite. Art has always required struggle, patience, and problem solving. These are processes that shape not only the artwork, but the artists themselves. When images can be generated instantly with no effort, creativity becomes passive instead of active. AI doesn't enhance creativity, it replaces it. At the same time, schools are failing to support the arts. Even here at AMS, we're seeing arts or liberal arts-focused programs declining due to budget and personnel cuts. But art is important. It gives students space to think differently, to relax, and to explore ideas in ways that traditional academic subjects don't usually allow. One of the most important things to know is that just about everyone uses AI. Students, teachers, parents, almost everybody. A lot of the time I see people using AI to generate ideas, create artwork, write essays, and even think for them. When people rely on AI to create, they stop learning how to think creatively for themselves. Instead of learning how to draw, design, or express ideas visually, they depend on these algorithms to make creative decisions for them. This creates a kind of an intellectual laziness and removes the discipline required to grow as an artist. There's a quote by Matt Corral, who is a British designer, and he puts it clearly. With AI art, there is no feeling to communicate, no creative process, and therefore no value imbued in the content. Art is not just about the final product, it's about the process, the struggle, the mistakes, and the growth. When that process disappears, so does the meaning behind the art. Technology, when left unregulated, undermines creativity and weakens independent thought, contributing to the decline or death of real-made human art. This dependence on the internet and AI conditions people to expect creativity without effort, reducing art to a product rather than a process. When individuals no longer need to struggle to create, they also lose the emotional depth and personal investment that make art powerful and human. Even more troubling is the way that AI systems exploit existing human-made art. These programs are trained on enormous data sets of artists' work, often taken without consent or compensation, absorbing styles, techniques, and visual languages developed through years of human labor and effort. AI art is vampirical. It feasts on past generations of artwork and destroys the beauty of real art. When art becomes a recycled output of algorithms, instead of human expression of experience and emotion, creativity is drained rather than expanded. AI art thrives on consuming human creativity while weakening artists' ability to sustain both their craft and their livelihoods. AI extracts value from these artists while simultaneously replacing them. The result is a system that profits from creativity while stripping the real artists of recognition, economic stability, and cultural relevance. As AI floods the market, the perceived value of human-made work is diminished. We begin to treat art as something to consume, not something to create. And when creativity no longer requires effort, we lose the emotional depth and personal connection that makes art human. At the same time, art education is slowly disappearing. Cutting arts programs doesn't strengthen education, it weakens it. It leads to disengagement, reduced critical thinking, and a loss of creativity that impacts students both academically and personally. Consider this statistic. About 55% of school districts have either been cut or massively decreased funding to the arts to the point of them being inoperable. This is not a small issue, it's a nationwide pattern. Students are being denied opportunities to explore creativity during some of the most important years of their development. Without access to art, further students discover creative passions or develop artistic skills. Furthermore, public institutions like UCLA and CU Boulder saw 35% and 78% declines respectively in art history majors, while even elite schools such as Princeton saw a 27% decline. On top of that, there's a growing stigma that art is impractical or useless, and STEM fields are prioritized because they're associated with stable careers, while art is dismissed as useless. As fewer students study art or art history, we risk losing our ability to understand visual culture, history, and human expression. This isn't just an educational shift, it's a cultural one. The stigma that art is useless makes me incredibly upset. Many students, parents, and even educators view art as less important than subjects like math, science, and technology because it's not directly tied to a high-paying career path. This perception reduces art to something optional or recreational, rather than recognizing it as a critical form of intellectual and emotional development. As a result, students may feel discouraged from enrolling in art classes, fearing that their time would be better spent on more practical subjects. The government plays a role in this as well. When budgets are cut, arts programs are often the first to go. Funding is directed towards subjects tied to standardized testing and measurable outcomes. And the Trump administration is cutting and withdrawing grants to the National Endowment for the Arts this year. The sudden withdrawal of funding organizations that rely on these grants to support and preserve cultural expression is unacceptable. By targeting the National Endowment for the Arts, the Trump administration sends a clear message that the arts are expendable. Despite their proven impact and effectiveness in education, civic engagement, and national identity. This is my art.
Wow.
It's not beautiful
Wow.
because it's perfect, it's beautiful because it's not. You can see fingerprints, smudges, uneven edges, clear and obvious mistakes. Those mistakes are what make it meaningful. They tell a story. They represent times in my life and my emotions. They represent me. When I spoke to Cameron about my thesis, she said something that really, really stuck with me. The beauty of art lies in humanity. The finger indents in clay, pottery, messy brushstrokes on a painting, erased lines of a drawing. These are what make art real. When art becomes flawless, automatic, and effortless, it loses that humanity, and without humanity, it loses its meaning. So how do we combat this decline? It starts with education. We need to invest in arts education and make it accessible to all students. Art supports cognitive development, improves mental health, and expands how students think about the world and their place in it. We also need to challenge the stigma that art is useless. Students are often told from a young age to prioritize STEM subjects and abandon creative pursuits. And over time they internalize this message and stop creating altogether. I've personally even been told that I'm wasting my potential, or I could do so much better in a STEM field. These things have to change. We need systems that encourage creativity, requirements that include art, policies that support funding, and a cultural shift that values artistic expression just as much as academic achievement. We can start by valuing art in our own lives, choosing to create instead of consume, supporting artists and recognizing the effort behind human-made work. We can advocate for a stronger arts education in our schools, pushing back against the idea that creativity is secondary to other subjects, and we can be more mindful of how we use AI, treating it as a tool or not at all, but especially not a replacement for human expression. Because this isn't just about saving arts programs, it's about preserving imagination, individuality, and the ability to express what it means to be human. So I want to leave you with this. When governments cut funding for the arts, schools stop prioritizing creativity, and AI begins to take over creative spaces, are we slowly choosing to silence human expression?
How do we get people to stop using AI or less?
You know, I feel like, I don't know, especially in education, I mean, there are ways to check for AI, there are ways to, have people not use it because there's a lot of ramifications and punishments that come with using AI and a bunch of stuff. So I feel like if we have more punishments for that, maybe people will be less likely to use AI. Yes.
Dan, this is it seems to me anyway, a philosophical argument for for a human identity crisis, where an essential part of human identity is artistic expression, and that is under threat or at risk right now. I'm just wondering if you, oh my God.
Okay, so sorry.
No, that's not you. That's just.
If, sorry about that. The philosophical ramifications of this